Right, we are live by the looks of it. A little bit late, no big deal. So, right, welcome to the Urban Agriculture Show on the virtual pub. New time slot, so we've got a bit to show as well because we've had about 12 days elapsed, something like that, since then. So now it's Sunday, every Sunday, 4 o'clock. And we're going to do, well, what we've been doing, but because we've had a little gap, 12 days, we've got quite a lot of growth and quite a lot to go through, which is quite cool. Comments as well, because it's just me here, I will field afterwards and I'll try and answer whatever comes up, which is really cool. So just a few bits, just going to go through some little bits and pieces that have come up. People have been in touch about growing, about what they're doing. So, you know, if you have got pictures, send them in the comments, let us know what you're doing. You can, and also send them to me as well, and if there's some kind of advice I can give, I'll give it. As well, I am putting a lot of stuff on just my own personal Instagram for this kind of stuff, so at Joseph Wild, Insta and Facebook. But wow, this has been crazy. What, you know, the kind of the in that 12 days, the weather we've had, that sun, and just how mild it's been, and it really makes for masses of growth, like huge amounts of growth, because it's been, the nighttime temperatures are very mild, summer temperatures are blazing, and now we've had a few days like this in a row, which is quite cool because it is just temperate. You know, it's not scorching sun. I haven't really even watered for really since Friday, maybe since Thursday. So yeah, and loads of people in contact, so I'm just glad everyone is out there growing, doing their thing. We're really coming into late spring, early summer, but where we are in Devon, down south, it's that bit milder, so it really allows for this huge amount of growth, which is quite awesome. So we're going to go through a lot of different bits and pieces today, and some planting and various odds and sods. Now, with the weather being as it has been the past few days, I haven't done any watering. It's great. You know, I've watered on the hot days, I haven't watered on the cold days. I think when you meet people and they're just starting out gardening, they've either got a tendency to just overwater and drown plants, or they underwater. And obviously all plants have got different water and nutrient requirements, so we're going to do a little bit about feeding as well later, which it's not particularly complicated. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to do some stuff on polyculture, which polyculture means planting more than one plant in the same place, using vertical space. So you want to plant tall things with things that grow quite flat, all pretty easy, and companions that tend to, you know, the adage is what goes together grows together. So think classic pairings like tomato and basil. Some things they're pests, so carrots and onions will deter each other's pests, so carrot root fly will deter onion fly, and it's one of these classic little pairings. And it's also using that space as well, where maybe something is quite slow maturing or something fast maturing. It's, you know, this stuff is not rocket science. We've been doing this is part of our ancestry. We've been doing this. It's, you know, the birth of civilization really is the agricultural revolution, and you know, this is a new one here because we're going to do it right in the towns and right in the cities. And so let's go through a few bits. So part of polyculture, to give you a background, is also viewing it in 4 dimensions. So we're looking at time is a big thing. So using that as a base, you can use slow maturing and fast maturing plants together and utilize that every little bit of space you can do. You're also coming down your water usage, all that. If you're on a meter, that's a big deal. But this comes to, there's 2 terms that really come, which is catch cropping and interplanting. So I'll go through those really quickly. So catch cropping, say you've got a bed, there's nothing in it, you've got nothing to go in it yet, or you have plants that are gonna, maybe you know, you need 6 weeks or something before they're ready to go, and especially with bigger stuff, tomatoes, pumpkins. So you've got that space, it's just dead space, it's not doing anything. So what I have been planting is things like radishes and pea shoots, which are start to finish about 4 weeks. So I have some here just harvested today. You know, they're pretty cute. I'm going to grow these on, like, you know, I've got a big bed of them. Not a bed of them, I've got like a big planter of them. But yeah, we've got some red ones, we've got some, I want these bigger, you know, I want these to be like giant sized radishes. So I've taken a few out as an example. I was going to harvest more today, but I'm not going to. But I mean, 4 weeks, that's a little crop. The thing not to be missed with this is these radish tops will really braise nicely. You know, if you fry that in a little bit of garlic and olive oil or something and just kind of fry it off in the pan, saute it, they're really lovely. So again, with these permaculture ideas, it's, you know, it's not just a single use crop, you're using every part of that, and it's kind of 2 for the price of 1. So we'll review on a couple of the other bits we've done along the way. So still got heaps and heaps of these lentils. I'm going to harvest all these now. These ones were cut, and so we've got like a second little harvest on that. If I'm honest, I'm over these. I'm bored of it now, so I'm going to just harvest all these, and it's one big salad, just chilling. Got some of these mung beans that are producing like shoots now. I'm not going to eat these. I don't want to eat these personally. I don't think this is for me. Maybe you could plant these on. If this was something else, you could plant these on and actually plant them out as plants. It was a bit of an experiment, so that's what I'm gonna do. You know, it's for the sake of a few beans and a bit of soil. It worked, you know, for that purpose. So one thing we do have, which is quite cute, is the idea of like a little mini salad bed or a salad tray. So I'll try and hold these up to the camera nicely. So we've got these are Lollo Rossa, they're lettuces, the ones on the outside. If I show you, try and get a little bit of a bird's eye view. Now this comes into, again, the idea of this constant continual harvesting, where they're cut and come again crops. So we're just going to take these outer leaves off. So there's maybe 3 in each of these ones. There's maybe 3 or 4 lettuces, but we're only going to be harvesting individual leaves really as we go. So that will give this maybe 6-8 weeks harvest of individual leaves. And in the centre, if I can try and show you with that, these are lamb's lettuce. So these have all kind of matured quite slowly, but let's get them in. Stuff like lettuces are pretty shallow rooted. They don't need really deep soil. You don't need a heap of water, and they actually like it kind of shady, so you can put it somewhere slightly out of the way. You don't have to really heavily water, but it's just, we're going to be continually taking a harvest from this. So it's not just a case of you grow some lettuces, you slice it off at the centre, and then, you know, you have that head of lettuce. We're going to be pulling these, so it's just, you know, every time you want a salad every couple of days or something, you go out and you have all these different things, and it's essentially the pick and mix of salad. But for, you know, the actual amount of work involved, it's super easy. We've got a few things to plant out today. We're going to plant out some tomatoes as well. But these, just to sort of note on these little lettuces, they're a bit of a chef's favourite. It's a variety called Lollo Rossa, and they're kind of red, green, frilly, but they're just really, the flavour's incredible, and it is, you know, it's very pretty aesthetically. And these little lamb's lettuce, which again I'll try and show you, you know, they're slow maturing. I kind of ignored them and didn't do anything with them, and I thought, you know, they need a home, they need to actually go out. They were just sat in trays, so let's do something with it. So pump those in. So they're just done now. That is, you know, it's 5 minutes work, and we will quite happily just, you know, that's a continual harvest. You know, you'll take maybe a couple of little harvests a week, but it's this whole idea of we're going to be having these little pockets of things. We're going to be taking some greens. So I've got this tray again. This has been knocking around for a while, so I'm just going to cut this whole thing down again. So all these like this was all pea shoots and kales and stuff, so I'm just going to harvest all these, you know, because they're not really serving me anymore. But I've got these beautiful little kale leaves that are great for salad. But at this stage, raw, man, amazing, just so tasty, you just can't beat it. And you know, garden greens will always be superior. So coming to this idea of like what grows together goes together is where your polyculture comes from. So you think, actually, what do I want to grow and what will grow together, what will maximise that space and give me the maximum output with the minimum input. So we're going to look out, I'm going to plant some toms in a second, but we'll go over and we'll look at some interplanting and some other bits and pieces. So we've actually put on quite a lot of growth here. I'll try and show you what's here. So kales that went in last time are actually, they're still quite not small, they're really putting on nice growth. But it's, you know, we're going to take a harvest off this in a bit, but we're not going to, because it's the first one, I'm probably going to take not heaps off it. and we're just going to, you know, take a little harvest off this. But these are going to produce for at least 10 to 12 weeks until the weather gets really hot. Then it might get a bit firm, it might get a bit woody. Now I had some gaps and I had some spare plants, so this is always a big deal. So in these tomatoes, which are caned here, we're going to plant some in a second. They're actually, that's not a very good one, but I had this spot, so I had some little rocket plants. So on this, what goes together grows together. Let's put some little rockets. So the main idea with this is that while these tomato plants are at this size, they've not got great water requirements, but they're not shading out anything. So by the time we harvest these rocket, these will be taller, and they actually quite like a bit of shade. So they're going to benefit from the tall tomato plants shading out these other bits, you know, shading out the rocket. So coming down to here as well, we have, I'll just try and find a good spot, camera. So I planted these out last time, these kales, which are really doing amazingly. Because that space is available at the moment, I had some little plug plants with some spring onions in them. So I sort of chuck them in. And, you know, nothing's really competing for the space or for the light at the moment. They're both quite light feeders, so they've got the same feeding requirements. So with these tomatoes and rocket, they've got very opposite feeding requirements. So we're just going to use this. While these are small, they're going to get a light feed, you know, just a pretty much a broad scale kind of all-purpose vegetable feed. When they get bigger and they start to fruit, their feeding requirements are going to be quite drastically different. But by that time, the rocket will be harvested, and we'll be we won't have to worry about so much anymore. But yeah, we've got a couple of little bits to go through. So the spring onions we've done, and just to sort of come back to this, the whole footprint of this little kind of garden bed is about 2 meters by 3 meters. It's going to be highly productive, but it just shows you don't need masses of space to do this. Same, we've got all these little nasturtiums down here. They'll produce flowers which are edible. They'll also produce like a really nice leaf crop, and as low maintenance goes, you know, you can't really get any more low maintenance. So we're going to do some planting now. Now tomatoes, lots of people grow, and you know, I see people doing all different ways, but I'm just going to grow 2 in these large pots because I can control the rate of growth. It's going to be more manageable. I don't have to worry about, I've had no slug damage on anything really. So probably 2 in a pot this size. I would call this a 12-inch pot, I think, around about. Yeah, it's probably like a 12-inch pot. So I'm going to do 2 in each, which is kind of greedy a little bit. You could probably give that more space, but you know, the water requirements and the feeding requirements and just the manageability of that will be much easier. So just going to do 2 in each. So we've got about 10 tomato plants at the moment, and if you think about that, as the water requirements change, as they start to fruit, you're going to really have to keep on top of that watering and that feeding. But super simple, we're not going to do this. So I'm going to just say again, you know, these pots have been pre-watered, the plants have been pre-watered, so there's just really no what they call transplant shock when they go in. So you've got the potting medium or the compost in here is nice and moist, what's in here is nice and moist, so it's not gonna, you know, you've not got dry and dry, it's just going to be wet soil hitting wet soil, and therefore you're going to get less transplant shock, and it's a lot easier on the plants, because plants are like us, you know, they're susceptible to stress or stress factors, and so the more you can minimize that, obviously the more productive they are. Now talk a little bit this, because obviously we've got a couple of canes in here as well. I've heard some horrific horror stories with people falling on canes and kind of, you know, they're semi-anecdotal, but people going up their noses or in their eyes and stuff. Either way, it's super dangerous. You know, they're really sharp. So I've tied these off, and I've also, just so they're more visible, I've just put little peg tops on that. So as long as you can see them, you're not going to trip over them. But it's a big thing, and we're going to slowly tie these up. I mean, they don't, at this height at the moment. Sorry. At this height at the moment, they don't need any tying off. We're just going to tie these, and once they reach kind of the height of the cane, we will essentially pinch that top growth out and allow the side and allow them to fruit. So yeah, it's just super quick. All these little bits, and you know, all these little bits you've harvested. I'm really only 12 weeks into growing. But the cut and come again crops and this idea of that is this continual harvest. It's not a case of like, right, you grow a plant, cut it down, that you've got this, you're constantly picking leaves and constantly picking all of these different aspects of it. So polycultures as well, there's so many different ones, and there's so many different ways you can do it. Another one I'm going to do, I'm waiting for some plants to grow on. I've got some here. So these are little dwarf beans. So they, again, this level of work, they don't need staking, or they don't twine up. They'll just grow up on a little stick. They might need a bit of support. They're little purple sort of French beans, and I'm going to grow those with some little dwarf turnips and some beetroots. So it's again using that, maximising that space all the time, and just using plants that actually will, are good companions. With beans, it's they have a strange symbiosis with a bacteria in the soil. So they can actually fix nitrogen, which is what makes plants green, or it's essential for photosynthesis. They can fix that and essentially put more nutrients into the soil than they're taking out. So giving that to another crop, you're actually, it reduces your feeding requirements, but also, it's letting plants behave how they would behave anyway. So that symbiosis essentially reduce that feeding. Couple more bits. Sorry, I'm losing my way here a little bit. But yeah, polyculture, it will just essentially reduce, the main thing is reducing work. Because this shouldn't be work. I mean, I've only grown enough to sustain me if I was at work. So that level of work, which really maybe 20 minutes a day, it's not much. You don't want to be, it shouldn't be work. It should be fun. It should be just something. And this comes down to as well, some of the aspects with what we're doing now is the idea that these scissors are nice and clean, not sharp. So we're going to take off some of this growth. But I'm not going to take off too much, because obviously your scissors aren't clean. If I start chopping this, I can transmit viruses or disorders or whatever from one plant to another. So nice, clean, sharp scissors. So I'm just going to take off there. Nice big green leaf. I'm just going to take off just the outer growth. I'm going to actually clip it quite close. And there's these little ones there, the baby leaf essentially. So this, before you get a leaf that looks like the plant, you'll get the first leaves that come out are two little baby leaves that are quite close to the soil. So we're going to take those off. We'll discard them, we won't eat them. But it will keep the snails away, and it will keep that growth that we want further and further away from the soil. Just as a note as well, all of these plants in here, there's more. Even though they might look like there's 5, there's actually more like 8, because some of them are 2 in a pot or 2 in a little module. But I mean, this Cavallonero it's just the bomb. It's just, as kales go, it's kind of one of a true king amongst vegetables. I'm not sure we're going to do this with this one yet. I think with all this little tender growth, because at this time of year where it's not blazing sunshine, it's just quite pleasant and nice. It's so tender where kale can get a bit, if you grow it in the winter, it's very hardy. If you grow it in the summer or in late spring like we are now, it's super tender and super sweet. The flavour profile is very different. But just going to take all this off. And this is not going to be the biggest harvest we're going to get, but as we go on, as these plants get more and more established, that growth rate will really go up. But yeah, they're just absolutely beautiful. We'll take some of these as well off the English style kale, so it's a dwarf kale. So I've lost it there. So yeah, it's a little frilly number, but at this stage it's really nice in salads as opposed to cooking it, or you can actually reduce the cook time quite a lot. but it's really, really pretty. And just, I don't know, for me, I just don't think there's anything better. But again, not taking a lot of today, just taking enough, and it will actually, chopping down like this will actually increase growth rate. It sounds counterintuitive, but it will. It'll actually kind of force the plant to concentrate its energy on creating new growth, and it's not fruiting, so they're actually, the requirements of this plant are pretty low. So I'm just going to, for the purpose, I'm just going to take this one for now. This one I might leave on. So we've got a nice little harvest so far, and there's plenty more to harvest as well. So we're going to go back to just feeding on the following bed. Switch the camera over a bit. So I'm just using this one. It's just $5 from the supermarket. Just an all-purpose vegetable growing medium. It says it's organic. One thing to look out for is it'll have the Soil Association little logo on it. That means they've got really quite rigorous standards. If it's Soil Association one, they really are very strict on what that entails. This one doesn't, but it does say it's vegan, which is also good. Now, with any kind of commercial feed or a pre-made feed, follow the instructions above anything. Plants can be susceptible to scorching if you overfeed them. They don't need to be overfed. If you see any yellowing, that means that it's got some kind of deficiency, or it's not getting all the nutrients it needs, especially nitrogen. And if it's a sickly plant, it'll be susceptible to pests and to other things that might want to eat it. So I've actually, for this one, I've actually mixed it up, this feed at half strength. I just don't feel it's necessary to, sort of feed at full strength at the moment. And some of these plants are a bit younger. They can take it, but I'm gonna just, I've used half strength, and maybe with the tomatoes especially, once the rocket's out of there, I'll mix it a bit stronger because when it's in fruit. But if your plants are healthy, you'll feed in once a week, maybe twice a week at half strength. You'll see the results. So that's about as far as I've got for today. So obviously, any other questions in the comments, just field them. I'll answer them as I go. And yeah, that's it for this week. I'll see you next Sunday. Thanks very much.